I believe in Atlantis. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a history buff of Atlantis, but I believe that there was probably something underwater. I think it's so weird that they tell us that we can only go 8 miles deep in the water, and they say we know more about space in the water. There's something in the water they're not telling us. So what is your opinion on Atlantis, Jimmy?
There's a few things to say on this. So when you say something underwater, that brings me back to that point that 11,600 years ago, there was a sudden rapid rise in global sea levels, which means that we should be searching off the coastline for hundreds of miles. But here's something else. When people will laugh off the legend of Atlantis, but there's a few things they don't realize. One of which is that legend actually originates from the ancient Egyptians. The Egyptians said that they were colonists of a destroyed cataclysm. And here's something that's unbelievably fascinating that ties in with that 11,600 year mark when I talk about the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe, which is that Solon, so we've all heard of Atlantis from Plato. Well, Plato got the legend from his distant relative who was Solon, who was said to be the wisest of the 7 sages. He was a Greek lawman and author. And when he went to Egypt, the Egyptian priest had told him that, so he went there in 2,600 years ago, or 600 BC. The priests in Egypt had said that it had happened exactly 9,000 years earlier. Well, 600 BC or 2,600 years ago minus 9,000 is precisely 11,600 years ago. The precise time of when we have scientific evidence that shows that there was a sudden and rapid rise in global sea levels. Like this is not just some Disney movie or some casino in the Caribbean. Like there's actual scientific evidence that corroborates that this was possible. And then you have this site, I don't know if you're familiar with the Rishat structure in the Western Sahara Desert, which I've been putting on blast as being the most likely location of Atlantis.
Because I was reading that. I read what you posted, yes.
It just so happens to match more than a dozen striking similarities of what Plato had described of Atlantis. And I'd encourage anybody to Google Rishat structure or Eye of the Sahara. It's made up of concentric circles, specifically 3 that would be of water, 2 of land, has an opening to the south, mountains to the north. It was said to be made up of red, black, and white color stones, which matches the Rishat. It was said to have an abundance of gold, elephants. And at that same period of time, a lot of people aren't aware that the Sahara Desert was actually a lush green tropical paradise up until approximately 5,000 years ago. People can Google this. This is all scientific studies. It's just that a lot of people don't know. So all the details line up that yes, there would have been humans that would have been wiped out at that period of time, 11,600 years ago. So the topic of Atlantis is not far-fetched. It's actually incredibly reasonable to suggest that humans would have been doing interesting things at that period of time and were wiped out by global events.
I mean, it's pretty deep, and that's why I love the research that you do. So, Jimmy, how did you personally kind of get into all this? You know, I'm guessing that you're religious, and that's why you're looking at, older stuff. Or, I mean, well, how did you get into it? Because, I mean this with all due respect. This is nerdy stuff, right? This is a lot of dates. This is not easy stuff to remember. Göbekli Tepe. I tried to explain to my dad about Göbekli Tepe. He's like, what the hell are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? This is to the layman, to the normal person. This stuff is very confusing. It's confusing to me. It's confusing to most people that look into it.
So how I got into it is that back in 2015, I went back to school to get my master's of business administration, thinking that it would give me this 6-figure job and give me the life that I wanted. And then in the middle of that program, I had this, I called it a spiritual awakening. I basically saw my life and realized that I was on a path of misery, that I had a bunch of friends that were very well off, but they all seemed to be a little bit miserable in their 9-to-5 jobs. And they were working like 60 hours a week. And even though they were making excellent money, they weren't too happy. And I started to see, I'm like, oh my God, this is me. So I graduated, and then I was applying at a bunch of places. Nothing was materializing. And I was basically thinking to myself that maybe I should just go back to school and become a school teacher. But I'm like, I have student loan debt. I can't afford a teacher's salary. So long story short, I heard that people were making money on YouTube, and I started dabbling around on there. And, I started making videos on the mysteries of lost ancient civilizations, and it kind of took off. And here I am. I feel like it was all kind of just meant to be, but I never would have imagined it would have taken to me where I am now.
Well, I actually would not be surprised, Jimmy, because the way that you talk about these crazy things, I don't know how else to call it, and you say it in such a professional manner, and it's so good, and I'm just saying you take these things that a normal person can't understand, and you make it so clear and so easily understandable. So that's why I think that you would be talented if you're trying to do any sort of content, but especially when it comes to ancient civilizations. You really are the premier guy, and that's why people like Joe, that's why you're friends with Graham Hancock, that's why you associate with such successful people. So
I'm so fly, I'm aligned with the planes. My grind so